The Gathings Committee, not your usual book haul. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and this time we're going to look into a little bit of vintage paperback history. In 1952 and 1953, the House of Representatives appointed Democrat of Arkansas, Ezekiel Gathings, to be the chairman of a committee looking into obscene literature as far as paperbacks, comic books, and things like that. We're going to take a look at the paperbacks, some of the actual paperbacks that they looked at. The committee was actually the name of it was the House Select Committee on Current Pornographic Materials. And what happened was they were charged with looking at certain books and they were upset with the what they considered to be obscene, or what they considered to be books that were lurid, and they wanted to actually ban a lot of books. They wanted to cause books to be what's the word? I can't think of the word.
Censored?
Now. Censored. That's what there was, censorship. They wanted to censor a lot of books. So we're going to take a look at some of the actual books that they put in their exhibits, because they had like at least 88 exhibits, and we'll look at some of them now. The first one, which I'm going to talk about, is Women's Barracks, gold medal book number 132 from 1950. This was a wild bestseller. Sold over 1.5 million copies. It's got women in the army, women undressing, so it was a very popular book, a big seller. It's by Tresca Torres. Now, the story is that she was actually a female soldier in the French underground, in the Free French forces fighting in World War II. And she was with other women that were fighting the Nazis in Europe. And this is her story of the fight that went on and the women that were involved in that fight. Some of it, a little bit of it, has to do with a bunch of the women, and two of them happen to be lesbians. So there's an incidental lesbian content in it. Tresca Torres, as far as I've been able to determine from the writings and from history and stuff, wasn't a lesbian. She was just a woman who was writing her memoirs about what she saw, the women that she knew and saw during the time when she was in the Free French forces. So this is like a World War II memoir, but they spiced it up a little bit with the content, because it was a story of women warriors. So when Ezekiel Gathings, the congressman from
Arkansas,
yeah, he was a Democrat, and he was a staunch segregationist. He voted against every civil rights act that ever came out, and he was for censorship, very much for censorship. And when he saw this book, his reaction to it was that if this book is out there, it's going to cause men, if they see this book, to go out and rape women. That was his take on that. And it's like, there's like the old Shakespearean quote, "He doth protest too much," Later on, when the committee got rocking and rolling, they would, of course, go after this book because of the lesbian content. And they would list page by page what was objectionable material. So it's like page 46 or 47 is objectionable material. page 86 and 87, blah, 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 stuff like that. No sooner has Gathings been appointed the chairman of the committee by Sam Rayburn, the Democratic Speaker of the House, and he was given, he had 8 congressmen on his committee, and they were given enough money to hire lawyers, and they went right to work. He went right to work. What he did was he took them all into one of the office buildings that he had a suite in, and he showed them 100 or so of these vintage paperbacks, this one and a whole bunch of other ones. And he said, these are the books we're going to look at. These books became the exhibits of the committee, and he went after them. And and he just got to work right away. They called up before Congress under oath certain publishers, editors, and distributors of vintage paperback books. So this committee came out in 52, 53. So anything that came out in 52 and before were the books that they were looking at. And they had lawyers that were very aggressive and very skilled at twisting words and going after people. They had the publisher. They had publisher from Bantam Books and from Pocket Books and from other prestigious companies, and even those books they were investigating some of them. But they also smaller companies and distributors. The interesting thing with the distributors is one fellow. See, there's a 388-page report on the committee issued with the actual question and answer of the witnesses in front of Congress. So I read the whole thing. It's interesting that some of the distributors also were called up and asked to talk about certain books. One of them was Mr. Black, who was in the Virginia and Washington, D.C. area. He controlled distribution of paperbacks to that area. Hundreds of thousands of books in all local stores and everything. And he said that he actually censored certain books or stopped them from sale. He said that he had a couple of people, that he got a couple of letters about one of Mickey Spillane's book, I the Jury. And because of that, one or two letters, he took that book off of being for sale in his area. And other distributors did the same thing on their own because of religious groups or community groups or other that said this book or that book. And so gave Gathings a lot more power, that he felt that what he wanted to do was really censor all American literature and publishing. And he was very hot on it. And I'll tell you what happened, the results of it. But first we're going to look at some of the books. So these are the actual books from 50, 51, 52, and before. So this Women's Barracks. These are gold medal books. The Judas Hour by Howard Hunt. Tiger's Wife by Wade Miller. All these books were given exhibit numbers and entered into the congressional record. The Tormented. They were listed as exhibits and looked at because of their titles. Sometimes were provocative because of the cover art, of course, because sometimes that was provocative or lurid, but also and mainly because of the writing itself, the stories and the characters and what the stories told. Certain of the stories they did not like. I think that they did read a lot of these books, and they were looking for anything that they could see as prurient or anything that they could see as kind of not what they liked. And what they did not like was any kind of drug use, any kind of drinking. They did not like any kind of promiscuous sex, juvenile delinquency. They did not like any gay or lesbian sex. They did not like any racial component or interracial romance. and various other things that they wanted to expunge from these books, either have them taken out of the books, or we're getting a little bit of conflict from somebody outside the noise. But that's what they wanted to do. And because of that, they wanted to either have those parts, which many people sometimes in the old days used to call them the good parts, some of it, but they wanted to have those parts taken out of the books, or they wanted to have the books censored and taken off sale altogether. And it was a scary thing that they were actually advocating. And Gathings was a I think a kind of a nasty guy. Continuing anyway with the books, Shanghai Flame by A.S. Fleischman. I knew Sid Fleischman, and I interviewed him. He was a guest at Tom Lester's paperback shows years ago. Very nice guy, very fine gentleman. Later on, he became a children's author. Handsome, which is a book I don't know too much about. I've never seen this one. And how do you pronounce this? Coquette?
What is coquette?
Coquette, yeah, that's of course. Of course, I knew that. Now we're going to look at Bantam books. Bantam had a fellow was O'Malley was the head of Bantam books. He was brought up before the committee, and it was kind of quite upset, saying that we publish good literature, we publish all of our books are good, and the committee kind of said, well, yeah, but you publish a lot of good books, but then you publish these, And he says, well, they're realistic, they're people want to read about them, and it's it's good stories. It's funny, kind of like in the proceedings when the witnesses were talking, the representatives from Pocketbook and Bantam Books, and even one of the distributors, Mr. Black, always talked about how they were, they didn't publish certain books, so their books were better than their competitors' books, which maybe was true. I mean, some of the lower-end paperback publishers kind of skirted the edge of what was acceptable, and one of those was Gladstone, who was the publisher of Arco Books, which published a lot of so-called, he called them sophisticated books. They were for mature readers, sophisticates. He published Jack Woodford, and he published some other books, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm going to talk about. But another. So we're going to talk about the Bantam books. There's Louisville Saturday. It's a book about an army town. John Steinbeck, The Wayward Bus, was up for indictment, or looking at Don't Touch Me, McKinley Cantor. Lion Books was another one that they went to look after. Walk Hard, Talk Loud. So this was a boxing novel, but it was interracial. Twilight Men, of course, homosexual. Journey to Nowhere. It was a perma book. The Night and the Naked. I think that just on the cover art and the title had naked in it was a good indication to those fellows. I called them Gathing and his boys, because they were like a little group there that, with the hardcore, kind of nasty lawyers that they had working for them, were really like a tough outfit of hard-nosed guys that were going after people, after the publishers. Her Life to Live, Millie, Avon Books, that's the popular library. Then you had, of course, the three Amboy Dukes, which published by Avon, which is about a street gang in Brooklyn. There's actually a street, Amboy Road or Amboy Avenue in Brooklyn, which is, I think, in Red Hook, and that's where the Dukes came from. And in the 40s, this was a popular book. That's the first Amboy Dukes, Avon 169. Amboy Dukes with the new cover with the guy in the zoot suit. And then the movie edition, City Across the River. So it's proclaiming the movie, and there's even a scene from the movie on the back cover. Early Avon Books movie tie-in. Other books, Avon, Element of Shame. I Can Get It For You Wholesale, which was, this is the second Avon printing, this has a different cover from the original one, but this was a movie edition also, and this has some pictures of scenes from the movie on the back cover. And The Servant by Robin Mong. I think that's Somerset Maugham's a relation to him, I'm not sure who. Avon the Star. The Witch of Spring, about voodoo magic. The Build-Up Boys, public relations experts, and I don't know what else, but she's undressing. The Strumpet City by Don Tracy, it's a hard-boiled crime novel. Face of a Hero, World War II, the gunners in B-17 Flying Fortresses, and probably their life. Cage of Darkness by, this is a Bantam book, Teenagers in the Slums of Paris. Dollar Cotton, Bantam book, again it's interracial. No Bed of Her Own, this is a novel library book, which was Avon kind of imprint of Avon, and of course she had no bed of her own, so the poor wayward girl, he was probably going to offer her a bed. So that's why they looked at this, and they immediately, this is one book that they had to investigate. They did many others. Dark Moon of March, there's Dell Books. So they really went after pretty much a lot of the publishers. I'm not showing any of the digests, but they went after a lot of digest books also. All the digests, Knickerbocker, Rainbow Books, Falcon Books, Cameo Books, Uni Books, Marijuana Girl is a Uni book. So they went after a lot of those, and went through some of the books page by page. Like Marijuana Girl, they made a whole list of how many times marijuana is used in the book. They listed each page. How many times heroin is used in the book. How many times there's relationships, whatever kind of relationships, even just talking between black men and white women, or some kind of thing like that. They looked at just drug use in general in that book. Also jazz, Greenwich Village. There's a scene, I think, where they're in that book where they're in Greenwich Village, and they go to there's a gay club or something in the village, and they talk about that. That's part of the book, and then the congressmen or their lawyers for the committee talked about that part too. So there's like a lot of things that they were not approving of. They always find things that they didn't like. The Harem by Louis Charles Royer. They did not like this book because they said it promoted polygamy. I've never read the book, so I wouldn't know if it even has anything to do with polygamy, but that was their take on it. It promoted polygamy. It might have been a book about polygamy perhaps, but that's how they looked at it. And Gathings, Gathings, for looking at that cover of the Truscatora's book of
Women's Barracks.
Of Women's Barracks, and just seeing, that cover art would cause young men to rape women. That's just a crazy kind kind of thing that he had in his head. This guy was a really weird kind of person for thinking all that kind of stuff. Another one is a lion book, How Sleeps the Beast. Of course, this is an interracial. Combat by Van Praag. I don't know anything about this book, but if you'll notice the artwork, it's very interesting. So it's about a sniper, and he's shooting a guy out of a tree, and the guy's falling out of a tree. So I guess he's shooting a German or Japanese sniper, Japanese soldier that's in a tree. Maybe he's fighting the sniper. Then you had, of course, Erskine Caldwell. He was writing all these southern sleazy romance kind of things where Avadi did a lot of the cover art on the reprints. It was always like the old man he had three beautiful, sexy young daughters, and he was trying to keep them away from the town people and stuff. The first one, I think, was God's Little Acre. And this is like a pre-Signet book. This is actually a Penguin book. And this is a Robert Jonas cover. Robert Jonas I interviewed years ago when I knew him. Very, very fine gentleman. And he pretty much created this kind of a peephole cover. So you're seeing the fence here, and you're seeing through the fence at the rural landscape. All of these Erskine Caldwell books took place in a rural landscape area. And this is an early one. This is the Penguin, and then there's a Signet, House in the Uplands. Again, Jonas is using the kind of door frame, peephole kind of look to see through. And they did this on many covers. This was a popular cover art device used on many books. And this is because just southern stuff was going on. There was between the romance between the races and things, and it was just like this committee did not like that, any kind of racial mixing, what they would call it those days. Then you had Mickey Spillane. And one of the first book came out in 1949. Let me see if just to make sure here. The first printing was 1948 of the paperback. I, the Jury, that was his first book, my first Mike Hammer book also. And that was another. They looked at two of Spillane's books, and then this was added because the Mr. Black, who was the distributor for the Virginia and Washington D.C. area, had one or two complaints about this book from some people in his district, and so he decided on his own he was going to stop selling it. So he didn't sell Mickey Spillane this book and the next book, the new Mike Hammer mystery, My Gun Is Quick. So these books were already not censored; they were taken off of sale in certain areas. And you had a lot of that in certain areas of the country, especially in the South. There were, because of local pressure and community pressure, distributors took books off sale, or books never went on sale. Sometimes they would just say, hey, we're doing a book about, we're doing a black writer was writing something, maybe Richard Wright's book or something, and they would just say, we're not going to sell that in the South, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't distribute it. And they would just send them back to the distributor, send them back to the publisher, say, no, we're not selling those over here. And that's what they did. Local distributors had a lot of power in those days also. The publishers wanted to sell as much as they could everywhere, but the local distributors sometimes got in the way. And but more in the way was the congressional committee. What they were doing, they were looking at these books. Young Lonergan, so this is a classic, and it's James T. Farrell. George Simenon, he was even up for Investigation. The Snow Was Black. The Shortcut, Haunting Story of Forbidden Love. That's all they needed. Half-naked girl on the cover and a haunting story of forbidden love. That was on their target list. Portrait in Smoke by Bill Ballinger. Bill Ballinger wrote a lot of thrillers and spy and crime and good, really good stuff. A Hunt for a Beautiful and Reckless Woman. Just a reckless woman, she's reckless, so that's it. And Woman of Rome by Alberto Moravia. The Signet Giant, body cover. And I believe this is, I don't think this is a body, right? Not sure. Might be, but I'm not sure.
Doesn't look like it.
That's definitely a body. So there you have a few of the books, the actual books that were in the cover art that were cited by the Gathings Committee as exhibits in their congressional record of 388 pages. Everything when they went after. There's a lot more to the story, but eventually what happened was Gathings was so zealous in his quest to go after these publishers and editors and distributors that even the other congressmen kind of had enough. They didn't like it. When he was going after magazines and comic books, that was a different story. Comic books were looked at as for kids, and so he did a lot of, him and others like Dr. Wortham, Seduction of the Innocent, did a lot of damage on comic books because they really hurt the comic book industry, and so they did their damage there. And they tried to do their damage in the paperback industry too. But it's a little bit different because paperbacks are, after all, books. They're not hardcover books sold in bookshops to people of quality, so-called, but these are books that are picked up by working class people and middle class people in various local venues, stores and shops and stuff. And they would read these books, and they are books. They are actual books, and they're reprinting books that have been published and that are famous. So it was harder for him to do that. The other congressmen began to shy away from what he was doing and what was going on, and they didn't like it. The media also did not like this. Mystery Writers of America, Howard Haycraft and Will Owsler. Owsler was a famous crime author and editor, and Howard Haycraft was the editor and a critic. Wrote to support the book publishers and to condemn what Gathings was doing. Also, the ACLU and PEN, the writers' organization, also wrote to support the publishers and were against what Gathings was doing. But he had a lot of support from other groups. Dr. Frederick Wortham, renowned psychiatrist who had written Seduction of the Innocent. He was very much on board with censoring books, and especially comic books. He saw more of his attack was on comic books, but he was also on board with censoring the paperback industry and regulating what they were to publish, how they were to publish it, what scenes they could show on covers, what titles, and all this kind of stuff they wanted to do. You had a judge, I forgot his name, who was very prominent at the time, who was writing a lot of letters that were entered into evidence by the committee against a lot of these books. And so it went on for 52, and then 53, the committee issued its report, and then the determination. And the determination finally, after all of this, was that they weren't going to do anything about it, and they didn't do anything about it. Thank God. They just kind of let it let it go. They just realized, I think a lot of them realized Gathings was off his rocker. He was overzealous, and they didn't like what he was doing, and they didn't like the interference into publishing and business and writing, which he was attempting to do. And so nothing ever came of this as far as paperbacks were concerned, thank God. And that's the good thing, part of the story. Unfortunately, there's another part of the story with the comic books, which did not turn out so well. But that's it. To look at Ezekiel Gathings, the Gathings Committee, the books that were actually the exhibits, some of the books, and we're lucky that they did not succeed.
And you're going to have an extensive article in the next paperback parade.
Well, yeah, I did a lot of research for this, and there's going to be an extensive article in a future issue of Paperback Parade about this moment in American publishing history, vintage paperbacks, and how they were looked at, how some of the publishers were browbeaten and questioned with gotcha questions that you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. It was like a Stalinist show trial kind of thing, where they would say, different things to almost make the person answer the question. You could not answer it correctly because whether you answered it one way or the other, you were always wrong. So that was a dark point in American history that we can look back on now and just say, thank God it fizzled out and it didn't go anywhere, because that would have been a tragedy. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Gathings books, and if you did, send it around to people, let them know about it, share it with people, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for looking.